A federal judge has ordered the release of the identities of dozens of people mentioned in the court documents related to convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. And new reports claim former President Bill Clinton is among those names, dating back to a 2015 lawsuit by one of Epstein's main accusers. Correspondent Alexandria Hoff has more.
Now, currently, within the hundreds of pages of sealed court filings related to Epstein, there are more than 150 individuals identified only as John or Jane Does. But the legal masking is about to come off. Last month, a Manhattan federal judge ruled that there was no justification to continue to have documents sealed in the settled case involving an Epstein accuser and the convicted sex offender's now jailed associate, Ghislaine Maxwell. The documents are expected to be unredacted and released as early as tomorrow. Among the named will be former President Bill Clinton. That's according to ABC News, which notes that the 77-year-old is mentioned more than 50 times within the lengthy court text. The references will likely come from attempts to have Clinton testify against Epstein and Maxwell. The ABC News report mentions that there is no indication that the records contain evidence of illegal conduct or allegations of wrongdoing by Clinton, although the accuser in the case did claim that she met the former president on Epstein's private island. Clinton's lawyers have maintained that he ended contact with Epstein in 2005, before Epstein was accused of luring underage girls to his home in Palm Beach. ABC also notes that many of the prominent names expected to be released, like Prince Andrew, have already been publicly associated with Epstein. Anita.
All right. Thank you, Alexandria Hoff. For more on this, let's bring in Fox News legal editor Kerri Kupec Urbahn, who was at the Justice Department when Epstein died in a Manhattan jail cell. Kerri, great to see you today. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
Yes. So this is a story that keeps popping up every couple of years, and now a federal judge has ordered the public disclosure of about 150 names of people mentioned in court documents related to Jeffrey Epstein. And as we just heard in Alexandria Hoff's report, President Clinton is mentioned more than 50 times. We already know that he was on Jeffrey Epstein's jet. What more might we learn?
I think we're going to get a better sense of how Jeffrey Epstein did what he did. And as you mentioned, Anita, I was at the Justice Department when Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. I still remember where I was when I got that phone call before the public knew that he had been found hanging in his cell. And it was devastating. And it was devastating for the Justice Department because we were robbed of an opportunity to bring him to justice. And so I think what the judge has done here is smart. It's good in the interest of transparency in this country. Our general philosophy in our legal system is that justice cannot survive behind the walls of silence. And so I think her making as much of this information as public while weighing the privacy interests of the victims has been good and helpful for justice and the greater good.
So other than President Clinton, and we know this is not a client list that is being released, right? This is a list of names that were mentioned in court documents by one of the accusers against Jeffrey Epstein. Other than President Clinton, are there any other big power players who are nervous about the release of these documents?
I think we may learn about people who were either on witness lists. Doesn't mean they were involved, doesn't mean they weren't guilty of anything. We may learn more about who some of these victims were. The judge did say that she would not unseal those who were minors at the time of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse. So we're not going to learn that, and I think that's a good thing in the interests of privacy in light of the horrors that those young women went through at the time. But again, I think we'll get a better sense of the ecosystem of sorts. The way that Epstein conducted all that he did, I think there's a lot of curiosity out there in the public about that still. And I do think there's also a movement that's separate from this, and I believe it's Senator Blackburn who is pushing for the release of the flight records as well, the official flight records. And I think those would be very interesting to see as well.
But that would be released at a later time, not with this release of the court documents.
Correct.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. That would be separate, but that's something. Right, but that's something I'm keeping an eye on because I actually think those flight records, those official flight records, could tell us perhaps even more than what we're going to learn this week.
Yeah, that could be very interesting. I want to change the topic very quickly because all eyes are on the Supreme Court next week as President Trump's legal team is expected to file an appeal to the Colorado case and the Maine case, those states trying to take his name off the ballot. Are we expecting a swift decision? I mean, how are you expecting this to play out? And a quick answer here.
Yeah, we are hurtling towards chaos if the U.S. Supreme Court does not get involved. That's really the bottom line. And if a single voter or a single election official or a handful of justices can unilaterally remove from people the right to vote for the candidate of their choosing, it completely upends the political process in this country and democracy, I think, as we know it. So I really hope they get involved and resolve this issue across the boards, because I think we're going to see more states possibly borrow the rationale, the reasoning of both the main election official and those justices in Colorado.
And quickly, you're expecting a swift decision by the Supreme Court?
The Supreme Court can really, they have full discretion. They don't even have to take this up at all. Again, I hope they do. I would think that they would move fast, given what the stakes are, the stakes being the 2024 election and the fact that our political process is just, I think, going to disintegrate into disarray if this continues. So I hate to say I expect, I would hope them to, because I think otherwise it becomes a very dangerous situation for the country.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. Like I said, everyone will be watching next week. Kerri Kupec Urbahn, thank you so much for your legal insights today. Great to see you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.